Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the third day of Real Estate Live UK. Delighted to announce the start of our day with a Scottish Ministerial Keynote session. Before we go into broadcasting that, before each session, we run a poll just to sense and gauge our audience's key motivators in terms of what the wider industry needs to think of as priorities. The poll should have just popped up onto your screen now, so I'd be very grateful if each of you could click your choice. While that's being fed through, I'll just highlight some of the other sessions that we've got on today. So it's a jam-packed schedule. We're following this particular keynote where we've got a focus session on Glasgow, some of the remarkable things they're driving in terms of innovation district growth. Also looking at sessions covering the strength and importance of the culture and creative sectors to regeneration and development across London specifically. Focus sessions on the innovation corridor. The full program can be found on the Real Estate Live UK website. Hopefully that poll should be closing fairly soon. While that's feeding through, I'd like to just introduce our keynote session. It's the third flagship highlight that we're doing throughout the week. Delighted to have the Minister for Trade, Investment and Innovation, Mr. Ivan McKee, representing Scottish Government, and this will be a slightly different style. We're doing a interview style session with Kat Feldinger, who's the Director Deputy for Investment Markets at Scottish Government, interviewing Mr. McKee, talking about the remarkable range of projects and capital investment drive that they're pushing out over the next few months and looking to transform the Scottish environment. So Kat, over to you. Looking forward to hearing the session. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I am Kat Feldinger, as Raj says. I work as the Deputy Director for Investment Markets and also recently the government shareholding in the Scottish National Investment Bank, which I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about over the course of the next half hour from the Minister. We are looking this morning really to explore the context for real estate and real estate investment at the moment in terms of COVID, what that's done to the sector, the things that we need to do to return it to viability, and actually what viability looks like beyond this, because there are obviously financial models that have worked in the past that may not continue to do so in the future. There are environmental models in the past that may not continue to work in future. Really interested in also looking to the Minister to explore some of the changes in the economy that we can make that will underpin future demand. And I am delighted, therefore, to be joined by the Minister for Trade, Investment and Innovation, Mr. Ivan McKee. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
So where I want to start is Scotland has a lot going for it, and I'm quite sure you'll agree with that statement. Yes. In terms of investment here. We're increasingly seeing a shift towards green and ESG values within that landscape. So what's important for you to drive forward on that green agenda? What are the opportunities and how does that link to recovery?
Well, I think that the first thing I recognise is that we can tackle this in a number of layers. So the political backdrop is hugely important, and Scotland was one of the first countries to identify that there was a global climate emergency, and that's really set the backdrop and our dedication towards delivering that net zero emissions economy by 2045, which is 5 years earlier than the rest of the UK, is really is absolute. We're on track to do that. So that requires substantial investment, and we recognise that that's only going to come through mobilising private sector finance alongside the significant investment coming through the public sector. So we're collaborating across the public sector, looking to bring a real high quality of projects to the market, including through the Green Investment Portfolio that we launched at the start of last month. And it really recognises and addresses the need for high quality investments at scale, those projects, those opportunities, taking them forward to the private investors, as well as providing a platform for opening conversations with investors to look at what Scotland's got to offer. So that the current release of those projects is more than 1 billion, and it will be 3 billion worth of projects ultimately, and that really aim to expand that with projects aligned to our climate change plan, which is driving us towards that net zero target. So it's systemic. We believe it's compelling. It's our Green New Deal. It's about how we rethink the investments we're making, the skills we need to deliver them, and how we use that to deliver this just transition that's very much at the heart of what we're all about in delivering in Scotland.
And obviously there's a lot of opportunities in that, but there's also a lot of uncertainty, I guess, around in the world at the moment. And a lot of, you see, at least rhetorically, a lot of countries sort of retrenching away from each other and parking themselves back in their own little national sphere. But a lot of these things we can't solve in isolation. So what would you like Scotland's role to be sort of globally around some of these issues? What do you think that we can do to make sure that the opportunities come and that they form part of that recovery?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of challenges there. COVID, Brexit, a lot of stuff happening with trade, the risk of retrenchment of economies. I mean, Scotland is a very outward-looking international country, and it's something we pride ourselves on and something we want to continue to do. And you see that very much on our wider political agenda in terms of engagement internationally. But in the investment space, we see that as absolutely central as well. We're just about to publish our inward investment plan, which looks at FDI, foreign direct investment, and that takes a very analytical approach to understanding where Scotland has those strengths and which sectors of our economy and how they're going to play in terms of helping to drive the economy post-COVID. So the plan's coming out in a couple of weeks, and it focuses on those sectors. It articulates how we're going to take those offerings to market, to work with foreign direct investors, to persuade more of them to come and be part of what we've got in Scotland. At the heart of it, very much a values-based approach, because that is very core to what we're about. It's about inclusive growth. It's about net zero, as we've talked about, and it's about maximising the wider spillover benefits into the Scottish economy to make sure that all parts of Scotland benefit from that, because there is so much that the regions of Scotland have to offer as well. We recognise that resilience is hugely important, and sort of hand in hand with that, it's about building local supply chains to work with inward investors, so we've got that capacity and capability enhanced across Scotland. That ties in very nicely with our export plan that we produced last year, that we continue to drive forward. Again, a real signal of our internationalisation aspirations. And the third part of that jigsaw, if you like, is our capital investment plan that we're going to bring out in the next few months. So together, they really underpin and talk to the focus that Scotland has in engaging with the rest of the world, despite the challenges we have now, and with a real eye on the future and what that looks like.
And you're leading some work on some really kind of practical examples of actually putting this into practice. I'm thinking of your work around PPE and sourcing equipment, and the way that you've linked that to manufacturing strengths and therefore sort of the need for commercial space in Scotland. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that was really something that came up at the start of the pandemic, where we recognised very quickly, obviously, that we had some challenges in terms of capacity around about PPE production. Now, we pursued a twin approach. We went out to the world and found what we needed, and Scotland didn't come close to running out of PPE, which was a great success. But in parallel with that, from day one, we recognised and identified the Scottish manufacturing businesses that could step into that space, and very quickly, with a cross-agency approach, through our enterprise agencies, through our innovation and advanced manufacturing centres, and working with our NHS procurement in Scotland, identified what we had to do to get those Scottish manufacturing businesses up to speed. So we're now at the place where more than 50% of the PPE we use in Scotland is manufactured in Scotland. That will increase to more than 80% as we bring more commodities on stream over the coming weeks and months. But it really demonstrated what we could do when we worked in a very focused way at pace and pulled together everybody we needed to pull together across Scotland to make that happen. It's a model that we are rolling out across other sectors of the economy. It's driving investment into our local manufacturing businesses, but very much, as I say, with a view to partnering with international investors to help support that. And that, as you say, is driving the need for skills in the economy, and which we've got a huge focus on retraining, and of course on commercial space. So that's something that we see as very central to driving Scotland's economy going forward and creating those investment opportunities that we think are really there in spades.
So it's a really sort of quite active government approach, really, to making sure that there continues to be demand in the economy, and that we continue to see growth and indeed companies moving towards recovery and therefore demand for space. We've obviously also got another new body landing in the landscape very shortly in the form of the Scottish National Investment Bank. And it has set itself missions around low carbon, around placemaking, and indeed what we were just talking about there around demography and well-being. So what difference do you think an organisation and the lending capacity that SNIB will bring to the market will have?
Yeah, Scottish National Investment Bank is going to be operational later this year, and the focus there is on providing a key source of patient finance. So it's looking at that long-term perspective. It's looking at areas where government can put money in and, very importantly, send signals that this is what's important to us. And the Scottish Government is committed to providing $2 billion over 10 years, which in an economy of Scotland's size is significant, of course, to capitalise the bank, and then that to leverage additional private investment to come in on the back of that. And it's about supporting businesses to flourish and enabling that transformational change that we see is so important. So the bank will run as a commercial bank. With government, it will set the missions, and then the bank will go and execute on those missions in the commercial space, which is the right way to do it. But it signals through the setting of the missions, government's intent, direction, and where we're determined to get to. So that's about shaping future markets. It's about sparking innovation and delivering those long-term returns on the environment. Across society and in the economic sphere, of course. And again, the just transition to a net zero economy is very much at the centre of that, about extending opportunity, equality of opportunity across all of Scotland is a big part of that as well. Engaging and mobilising the resource, the talent we've got right across Scotland, and working very closely to support innovation. Scotland's got some great universities that produce some fabulous R&D, more top universities per head of population in Scotland than anywhere else in the world, something we're very proud of. Commercialising that innovation through Scottish businesses is something we are very focused on now to deliver those wider benefits. The bank's going to take over a lot of the activities we've had up to now through the Building Scotland Fund, the Scottish Growth Scheme, and the work that Scottish Enterprise have been doing through their bank, all of that coming together in one place to really give it the force and the focus to deliver that long-term patient capital and helping to shape Scotland's economy going forward.
And that's obviously critical during a recovery phase as well, that there is a way that capital stacks for different projects can be supported so long as they remain commercially viable. It's a really interesting area, I think, to bring together almost the answers for the last three questions you've given us, one around the sort of the strength in FDI in sectors, one around what the Scottish National Investment Bank will do, and one around sort of the PP and the health and well-being aspects here, where we have a project at the moment in Scotland featured around Edinburgh Bioquarter, where actually all of these three things begin to come together. And so I suppose it would be really interesting to hear your thoughts on how important that kind of alignment actually is in the landscape. What does that do to drive coherence and demand? And what do you see as your role in that? Obviously, you sit with trade, investment and innovation.
Yeah, it's a great portfolio at quite broad ranging and all hugely important and interconnected to the future of the economy. Alignment is absolutely central. It's probably once alignment's about the cooperation and different parts of Scotland's ecosystem working together. And I think in Scotland we are fortunate because we're in that kind of Goldilocks zone, if you like. We're big enough to make a difference and have impact and add value, but we're small enough to be able to be hugely well connected. And what we always say in Scotland is we can get everybody we need to around a table, these days a virtual table, within a few hours. We need to make decisions on things, be that government, key people from the private sector, government agencies, academia, and other bodies, and we can get people around to have these discussions and figure out what needs to be done to tackle a problem. we spoke about what we did on PPE, and that was a great example of that. And it's something that works right across the whole of government and beyond. So what we're doing on our national infrastructure plan and mission that kind of lays the foundation for that infrastructure, so essential to encourage investment and economic growth. What we're looking at in terms of planning, reforms, the climate change agenda and how that is coordinated through the economic recovery. The Scottish National Investment Bank we spoke about, and then hugely important skills and training, are absolutely central. Scotland is fortunate. Investors are attracted by the high level of skills pipeline we have in Scotland coming out of our universities and colleges, but we continue to focus and develop that. So all of that is important, that it's lined up together and going in the same direction, so that we don't end up with some of it getting out of step with the rest of it. And I think that offers a very encouraging environment and a very, very responsive and agile ecosystem for investors to engage with us and with the rest of the ecosystem to help deliver what they need to do, and for them to understand where it is we're trying to get to in a very coherent fashion and how they can work with us on that journey.
So I agree. I mean, I think all of these, the way in which the policies are coming together is really creating a very strong base case for investment and property development, essentially for real estate development. But no real estate event without mentioning the other things that are important in that, around planning and taxes and rates and things which you've done a lot of work on establishing a good system for in Scotland too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of that is important, and we have planning. We've put through planning reforms to make that process more transparent and easier to navigate, and able to work with investors in a more coordinated way, and across the taxation, where we have responsibility for that, very responsive to understanding the needs of investors and how we can work together for a win-win. Clearly difficult in the current situation, but we've got an eye on how we get through this and what things look like in the future. But as I say, that's something that we're very focused on, and always willing, keen to talk to investors to understand what those blockages are. And as I said, that agility and that responsiveness, I think, is key to enable us to work to make a difference and deliver.
And of course, in current circumstances where the Scottish Government has introduced things like rates holidays for pretty much all occupiers across sectors, to kind of encourage people back into city centres and encourage that occupancy and the sense of life around cities, that sort of thing continues to be important. I know you're discussing that with our Cabinet Secretary for Finance too, how we keep initiatives like that going.
Yeah, no, that's true. And obviously the landscape is evolving, and COVID has driven some changes there. Are some of those going to be temporary? Are some going to be permanent? We are watching that very, very closely. So it's about responding to that, responding to where investors see the future and what the shape of that looks like. And as you say, making that space attractive in a way that's going to bring investors in, and make sure it's lined up to everything else we're trying to do across the economy. And as you said, cities, towns, what we're doing on innovation spaces, what we're doing on some of the large projects that have got a very coherent focus around specific sectors, and all of that very much tied into the net zero agenda. So very coordinated and very focused on how we see Scotland's economy going forward.
Okay, thank you. And Minister, before I launch into my final question, just a sort of a procedural one, would you be happy if Raj is able to source them to take a few questions from your audience this morning? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, if there's anything there that I'm quite happy to do that, yeah.
Great. Okay, then I will intervene in the meantime and give everybody time to scribble and type questions in the Q&A space and ask Raj to come in with some of them. Given current circumstances and lack of face-to-face, we've spoken about a lot of good initiatives this morning in terms of creating the demand and the landscape that still allows real estate investment and development to go on. How do we, in the context of the stay open for business and for investment, how do we continue conversations in these sort of slightly constrained circumstances and make it easy for people to come and find us?
Yeah, that's hugely important. And of course, everybody's experience through their day-to-day, the challenges of the situation we find ourselves in, and the event we're having today, rather than obviously a face-to-face event, is part of that. And we've been very proactive there in terms of being able to deal with that and hopefully provide platforms and opportunities for that engagement. We had a recent webinar on green investment a couple of weeks ago, and I barely a week goes by when I've not got 2 or 3 virtual events, which allows us to communicate the message and the great work going on in Scotland. So we'll be doing more of that, and we're today actually launching the Invest in Scotland app. So that allows investors to have a look at Map of Scotland and to navigate around that, click on what looks interesting in terms of investment opportunities that are on the app, and to be able to drill down and get a bit more information on those. The green investment portfolio projects that we've spoken about are included on that. So eventually, all 3 billion of those opportunities will be on there, large and small projects across the whole range of the green investment opportunities that are in Scotland. They'll be on the app, and I think that's a great way to understand and interact with what we've got in Scotland. It's worth mentioning, and I haven't mentioned it already, but Scotland's been actually very successful, and particularly around about FDI. We've been the most successful part of the UK outside of London for attracting foreign direct investment for 7 years now, 7 years in a row, as measured by EY. So that's a great result and something we want to continue on. And in the new world we find ourselves in, that obviously presents different challenges, but as I said, we're very agile, very responsive, and the engagement process is something where we're likewise very keen to continue to work with investors and have that dialogue virtually, if not face to face.
Okay, great. Raj, I am out of airtime. It is back to you. Have we any questions from the audience we'd like to put to the Minister? Anything you would like to
I'm afraid people are having a bit of a sleepy Wednesday morning, I'm afraid. So, I know, it's a shocker, isn't it? So
it's a tough call.
I think, well, either that or you and the Minister have brilliantly covered all the subject matter that our audience would be interested in. If I have a question for myself, are there any priority sectors that Scottish Government will be looking to specifically support and cherry pick in terms of targeted interventions, investment support, so on and so forth? I know green investment is a big priority area for Scottish Government, but are there any specific sectors that you'd be looking to enhance, grow within the nation?
Great question. The answer is yes. What we've done through our FDI plan that, as I say, is coming out in a couple of weeks, is did a lot of analytical work to understand where Scotland had genuine strengths and where there was also good flows of investment activity that we wanted to tap into. We've come up with 9 sectors, and you're going to test me now and see if I can remember all 9, and I'll rattle through those. So they're broadly grouped around net zero, around digitisation, and around advanced manufacturing. But what we're looking at, and these are areas where Scotland has real inherent strengths, and we've mapped these out, be it university expertise, skills pipeline, assets on the ground in terms of innovation centres, great business clusters, natural assets, of course, and all of that pointing towards these sectors. So software and IT is important, and a lot of that's around about cybersecurity, informatics, artificial intelligence, and the work at Edinburgh University in particular, and the clusters we've built on top of that. Digital business services, and again, a lot of that moving into AI type and cyber support, and digital financial services around about the fintech cluster, particularly in Edinburgh, which is excellent. On the green side, the climate change agenda, obviously the energy transition in Scotland is in a great place on renewable energy. We're now at more than 90% of our electricity in Scotland comes from renewable sources, which is fabulous. That's going to go through 100% next year, just in time for COP. Transformation of our chemical industry is very much moving into industrial biotechnology is a big part of that. And then also around about the decarbonisation of transport. So the work we've done on hydrogen, and we've got hydrogen buses, ferries, taxis that are very much on the radar there, and also around about our train cluster that we're building, rail cluster that we're building, rail manufacturing sector. And then the other ones are around about health tech, which is really a combination precision medicine. We're around about Glasgow University. We've got some real world expertise, and there's a lot of innovation investment happening there. And obviously the vaccine push is a big part of that. Food and drink innovation, you'll know about our whisky sector and our great food products, but how we take that into the partnering that with advanced technology, health and wellbeing products and so on, and the food and drink space is hugely important. And the last one is one that most people don't know about, but Scotland is a real world leader in the space sector. We make more satellites in Glasgow than anywhere outside of California. We're going to have Europe's first spaceport in the next year or so, and we've got a tremendously vibrant sector around about space data. And again, that's got a real climate agenda, because that's all about how you take that data from space and use it to analyse climate and environmental change. So that's where we're kind of focused in terms of the answer on your sectors. All of those have got FDI opportunities, all of them have got real estate and commercial property opportunities around about the clusters and the innovation centres we're building. And I hope I've given you the message that we're very focused on what we think adds value and what we're good at. So if you're investing there, then the government's behind you, and the whole of the Scottish ecosystem is very much focused on making those investments successful.
Thank you. I think that absolutely comes through. It's a remarkable process that Scottish Government are going in terms of driving public-private partnership. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and we need to go on to the next session, which is a focus session on Glasgow and the Innovation District programme that two universities there are driving to create local economic growth and impact. There have been a couple of questions that have come through now, which is typical at the end of the session. I have to close the session, I'm afraid, Minister, but for both the questioners, we will come back to you directly following the session with some answers, which hopefully either Kat or the Minister can directly respond to. So apologies to
Very
me
happy to, Raj.
for asking it. Thanks so much. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Kat, for a brilliant session. Really appreciate your time on this Wednesday morning. What a start to the day. Really appreciate it. Thank you all, and thank you everyone for viewing. Thank you.